Let us deal with authentication. To do that, we shall need to install a package called pygwt. Pygwt will help us to decode and encode GWT tokens. Okay, so with this, actually, I need to create a requirements.txt. So I'll say requirements.txt just to keep track of the packages we're adding. So we have pygwt, okay, and we can simply say pip freeze just to confirm the version. Say pip freeze grep pygwt. Okay, this is odd. I was expecting it to give me the exact version, but I think it is actually we already have it. It says requirement already satisfied. So make sure you have it installed. And it says 2.8.0. So I hope that's the actual correct version. Then pip freeze, just look for Django. Okay, so we have Django. And then what else do we have? Pip freeze Django. I want to look for Django Ninja. Okay, we have just Django Ninja. So I hope this is correct. I don't know why it did not work for pygwt. I'll need to study more about this. Okay, so let's continue. So with that done, we need to create an AuthBearer class, and this class will help us with handling the GWT and authentication. So I need to maybe close models for now, and then in this file, just at the top here, I can simply say class AuthBearer. Of course, you can decide to put this in a different module, but let me just put it here for simplicity since we are learning. And then it has to inherit from HTTP bearer. So I'll import that, not inherit, and say from ninja the security import HTTP bearer. Okay, so you need to turn our auth bearer class into an HTTP bearer by inheriting, and then after that shall override a method called authenticate, which will accept the request and a token. Okay, after that we shall try and then have try except blocks. We shall have an exception we need to deal with. Okay, so each bearer has an authenticate method that can help us to where we're going to do decoding of users and verifying users. Okay, verifying the tokens of the users, not only verifying users, but verifying the tokens they are sending to us. Okay, or the tokens that the clients are sending to us. So here we shall start by accepting the payload that we shall get from the request, and we shall decode it using JWT. So we need to import JWT because we just installed it. Then you say JWT dot decode. Okay, what are we going to decode? The token, the JWT token, and we shall see in a second how to create them. Then after that, we need to decode it using a secret. Okay, our secret will be in the settings.py. So I'll say from django.conf import settings. So this is how we get access to our settings. So I'll say settings.jwt secret, like that. So this is settings, lowercase s, settings.jwt secret, as simple as that. And then after that, we need to specify the algorithm we are going to use. So it's a comma algorithms. Okay, and this will take a list of algorithms that we're going to use, and this will come from the settings. So this will be settings.jwt algorithm. Okay, algorithm, if I can spell that right. So we shall need to have this in our settings.py. So let's go ahead and add that. So open settings.py, Where is it? And then we can scroll to the bottom and copy. So the first one is the secret. Okay. So you can make the secret the same as the secret key. Let's just have that. But of course, you can change it if you want. Then after that, we have the JWT algorithm, which will be equals to, we shall use the HS256 algorithm, HS256, okay? Then I can also put one more here, JWT EXP for expiration delta seconds, okay? Simply means when it will expire, and we can say equals to 3600, which means the token will expire in 1 hour, okay? So let's get back this other side and complete this class. So after we have got the payload and we have decoded it, the next thing to do will be to fetch a user to verify that a user for the token exists. We're saying user.objects, but now we need to import this user. So I'll come up here and say from django.contrib.auth import user, like that. You can say user.objects.get, where id is equals to the payload, but we're going to use looking for the user id, okay, because we have decoded it. We shall use the user id to create the JWT token. So when you're decoding, we should expect to have a user id in it. And then if that is successful, we simply return a user. And that is how authenticate will work successfully. Otherwise, if there's an exception, for example, we can expect to have a JWT.expired signature error. So when our token has expired, return none. Okay. Also, can say except. We can now do an except for two. Okay. The first one will be JWT.invalid token. Okay. So it's invalid token error. Then we have another one, user that does not exist, like that. Okay. So how does this happen when this operation fails? Okay, get will return a does not exist error when there's no user for this particular ID from the payload, and then this will be thrown or raised when the token is invalid, and this one would be thrown when the token has expired. Also here we can simply return none. So only when we decode the token successfully and we get a user, then we return the user. As simple as that. Okay, now we need to modify this instance of Django Ninja. Of course, you can put this to another file or module if you want. We can need to make changes to this. And this, we're going to take an attribute, okay? That attribute is called auth. We shall say auth will be equals to, okay? And this will be, I think Django underscore auth, but we need to import it, okay? Where? Right here from Django, from ninja.security, import http bearer I mean, and then Django auth. Okay, very important. We shall need it to help us for session authentication in case we need it. Okay, so after that, we can now work on the next endpoint. Okay, and that endpoint will be for registering users. Okay, an endpoint for registering users. Actually, before we can register the user, we need to add one more modification to this. Okay, so auth can take a list, can make it a list and say Django auth comma, what is it, Django auth, okay, comma, AuthBearer. And AuthBearer is essentially the class that we have just created, which is just right above the AuthBearer class. So after this, we need to write, of course, I can just have to put here parentheses to make sure this is an instance, okay? And then after this, we can now create a function to help us with, an endpoint to help us with registration. So I'll say define a function called register. Of course, register will take in the request and then a payload. This payload will be what will be validated using the user registration schema. So we need to create the user registration schema. So I'll go to schemas, scroll to the bottom and create class user registration schema, and it will inherit from schema like you already know. And so it has to also have a number of attributes. The attributes going to have, the first one will be username, which is a string. After that, we'll have an email, which is also a string. After, we shall need to have a password, which is also a string. And then we shall have confirm underscore password, which is also a string. Okay, since we are putting schemas, let me create the other one that we shall need soon, which will be the login schema. This will also inherit from schema, and we shall have username, which is a string, and we shall have password, which is also a string. Then we shall need also a token schema. So class token schema, which also will inherit from schema. And then after that, we shall have an attribute called access token, which will be str, and then maybe we can specify the token type. Okay, token underscore type, which is simply, and give it a string, and also give it a default value, which is bearer. We shall not be dealing with many kinds of token types here. We shall only be dealing with this type. Then we can say class message. Okay, message schema inherits from also schema, and this will take in a message, have an attribute is a message, overload the message, and it will be a string also. All right, so we can now move back to APIs and finish the registration endpoint. So we now need to import this, okay? From schemas, import user registration schema. So you see the error is now gone. So what we now need to do is to continue implementing this registration class. To do so, we simply now do some validation. The first one, we can check that if the payload, okay, dot password, okay, remember we have password here, okay, payload dot password is not equal to payload dot confirm password, as simple as that. Then we can return a 400, meaning a bad request. So this is the code for a bad request. And then we say, so return a message saying passwords do not match. Okay, so this is the payload. Okay, we shall be validating the payload using this, but then we also need to decorate this by saying at API. So this will turn into an endpoint at api.post /auth/register. Okay, that can be our endpoint for registering users. And we can say comma, the response like that will be equals to this can be actually a dictionary. We shall say 201 full colon. So for 201 response, when everything has successfully worked, we shall return a token schema. No, not return a token schema, but we shall return a token. Okay, and the token schema will help us validate that, which is this. Okay, shall have an access token and a token type. Schema are just for validation. We shall not return a token schema, but we shall return an access token and a token type. Okay, so I need to import this here, token schema. This is already too long. Of course, there are tools that can help you automatically format this better. All right, so let's go ahead. But when things are bad, okay, when we get a 400 bad request, like in this case, when the passwords don't match, then we simply return the message schema. So you can come here and say message schema. All right, so message schema. I think we are done with that. You can do more validation, one more, and say if user.objects.filter, okay, username is equals to payload dot username, okay, dot exists. So if we find a user with this username, then we cannot allow you to register because that account already exists, because usernames are going to be unique in our system. We shall say this is a bad request, and we shall return a message saying username already exists. So this is how you can do some validation if you like it. Okay, another one can say if user.objects.filter, it's the email, okay, will be equals to payload dot email, what you've sent, dot exists. If this exists also, then we'll simply return or say bad request and say message email already exists, like that. So if everything is okay, then we can simply create a user. And say user will be equals to user.objects.create. Okay, then we can say the username will be equals to payload.username, and then what else? The email, come on, email will be equals to payload.email, and then finally the password for this user will be equals to payload.password. But we need to hash this password. So to hash the password, we're going to import a function called make password, which will help us with this. So this will be from django.contrib.auth.hashers, okay, import make password. This will hash the password for us. So I can copy that, scroll down here, paste and wrap payload.password into this function. Okay, then finally, when we are done, we now have the liberty to create our token. So we shall say the token will be equals to create underscore token, and then we shall pass in the user. Okay, so we're going to create a function to help us create a token. Then we can return a 201. Okay, like you saw up here, we have the schema validating the response when we have a 201. So 201 meaning something has been created, a resource has been created, and in our case, a user has been created. We shall say access token, and access underscore token will be the token. Okay, and of course, we don't have to populate this token type because it will be, we have a default value here. All right, so we need to work on this function. We need to create the create token function. So to do that, we can create it at the bottom. Okay, so let me just scroll or just below it here. Since we are learning, we say define a function called create underscore token and then this will accept the user. And then here what we shall do is that we shall start by setting the expiry date, which will be equals to date time. Can use the UTC, okay, UTC now, but we need to import date time. Okay, so I'll scroll up here and say from date time import date time, comma, time delta. So we shall need time delta, like you're going to see. Then we can now move and say that UTC that now, okay, what's wrong with this? This has been deprecated. Okay, so since we're just learning, we can use it for now, but make sure you don't use it because this has been deprecated. What can you say? Date time dot now. What does UTC dot now do? They give us information on what to replace it with. Says the method UTC now in class datetime is deprecated. Use time zone aware objects to represent the time in UTC, e.g. by calling dot now. Okay, so we can simply say now, and then we shall add to this the number of seconds. Okay, now, so it will expire in the current time plus a number of seconds, and our seconds will be equals to settings dot, we need to use this. Okay, come here and paste. Okay, as simple as that. Then after that, we can see the payload will be equals to a dictionary. Then we have a user ID, user underscore ID, whose value will be user.id. Remember, we are decoding up here, user ID. Where is that? In AuthBearer. We are looking for a user ID after decoding in the payload. So that has to be part of the encoding process down here. Then after that, we can say the expiration time will be the expiration time, this right here. Then finally, as the token will be equals to gwt.encode. So we shall encode all this, okay, the user ID and expiration time, which will be the payload. Okay, as simple as that. Then we shall use the secret settings.gwt secret. Come here, copy the secret, paste it here. Of course, do not expose your secret like I'm doing, okay, especially if you're in production. It can turn out to be very, very costly. And then after that, the algorithm, that's the algorithm equals to settings dot, come here, paste that, copy it, then paste here, gwt algorithm. So then we return the token finally. So make sure that when you're encoding, you use the settings, the secret, and an algorithm, and the payload, of course. Now, when you encode, make sure when you're decoding, you're using the same secret and the same algorithm. So if you go up in this class, in the method authenticate, I decoded using the same secret and the same algorithm. So take note of that. That is very, 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 very key. Okay, so we need to move on. And the next step would be probably to first test this. So let's run our server, python manage.py run server. Cannot import user from django.contrib.auth. Okay, we need to move up. Where is that? Where is that? Auth.models. Okay, like that. Says no module named django.contrib.m. Let's restart the server because I just changed it to models. All right, that looks okay. So let's test this using Postman. So to test with Postman, simply come to your extensions, okay, where extensions, go to your extensions and search for Postman, okay, search for Postman and then install it. So you see mine is showing uninstall because I've already installed it. When you're done, sign in. You may be prepared to sign in. After you're done, you can now go to Postman like so, and now you can create a new request. So I'll copy this address and paste in that. So this is going to be, what did we say, is a post, okay? It's a post request. So I'll say post, and then after that we need to send some data, the body. If I can make this a little smaller, so we shall send raw data, which will be JSON, okay? So it will be slash API slash, is it register slash auth slash register. I hope that's what we called it, auth register, okay? So let's send the request. You see we get a 403. Are we getting forbidden? CSRF check failed, okay? So what we need to do, maybe we need to disable the Django auth. We don't need this, okay? We're not using forms here. So let me save that. Okay, go back to Postman, hit, we get unauthorized, okay? Detail unauthorized. So if I come back where is this? We had, there's something I'm looking for. I can't seem to see it. Okay, because this is supposed to work. We're supposed to come here and send, okay? Nobody's supposed to authorize this request. Supposed to send the username, okay, and so maybe this is a test user, then we hit send. But definitely something is wrong, so we need to fix this. If you look at this critically, you'll see that we have a global auth router. If you go to this module api.py, we have a global auth router. So all endpoints using this have to be tested against this, okay, against this class, having the authenticate method. So what I'll do, I'll create another router. I'll call it auth router, okay, auth router like that, which will be equals to Ninja API, okay, and this will have no authentication. Then for registration, I'll say auth router dot post, okay, auth router dot post. So we have no authentication with this. Then I can go to urls.py and import it, import auth router. Then can come here and say path API slash auth router dot urls like that. So I hope this works, and there's only one way to find out, by testing. So if you hit a request, we say processable entity, unprocessable entity, okay? So this looks like a new error. So you must be thinking that could be because of probably how we are creating the user. Let's check that. If I say user.objects.create user, okay, and then no need for actually doing this here, because create user will take care of that. So let's see if that helps. Usually when you want to debug, the first thing you should ask yourself, what does the error message mean? A 422 unprocessable entity means the data that you're sending is invalid, and we are supposed to be sending valid JSON. So let me try probably to put a comma here and hit send. All right, there we are. So we get a 400 bad request, which is actually what we expect. If I scroll to the bottom, okay, you see also here we get a 400. Says detail cannot pass the request body, expecting property name enclosed in double quotes, line 4. All right, let's try to fix that. Okay, let us say yeah. So what we're doing again is registering. Sorry, I just lost track of my thoughts. So let's go ahead and add the others. Okay, so email will be test at example.com. Then we have a password, which will be some gibberish. Then we have confirm underscore password, which will be up there. Okay, secure password. Or they actually have to be the same. Okay, they have to be the same. So let's put here so that they're the same in the passes. But let's make them different and see what happens. Send, we get a bad request. Okay, because of course they have to be the same. You see, they get a message, passwords do not match. Okay, so let's make them the same. Paste, send. Finally, we get a 201 created. And then when we come here, you see we get a token, access token, and the token type bearer. This is cool. All right, let's try to create again a user. You see we get a bad request. Now what is the message this time? Username already exists, so you can perform the request more than once for the same user, and that looks cool. So I think with this we can now work on the second function, which is login. So we shall go to API. I can scroll to the bottom. Of course, we shall clean our code later and deal with this and this other function in a different module. So I'll come here at the bottom and say define a function called login. Okay, and login will take a request. It will also take a payload. I mean, accept the payload, not take, but accept the payload, which will be the login schema. So I need to say comma login schema. So shall use the login schema to validate that. Say login schema. Actually, some of the validations you've been seeing here happening, like the 422 and the other one, came because of the schema. Then we can now come here and say at API dot post. Let us decorate this, and then we can say auth slash post. Okay, auth registered and is auth slash not post slash login. Sorry, and then we can say the response will be equals to a list. So when it is okay, so 200 is for okay, we shall return. We shall test this against the token schema. Okay, then when everything is okay, this is supposed to be a dictionary, not a list. Sorry, dictionary. Then when things fail, a 401 meaning unauthorized, we simply return to you the message schema. All right, so let's come down here. Not return to the message schema, we shall return to a message, but the message schema will be used to validate that message or the response we are sending to you. Then we can see the user would be equals to, we need to use a function called authenticate. Okay, but I kind of feel like we actually do not need this for now. okay, and maybe all right, let's try to use it. Let's use authenticate with Django, and I will come here and say from django.contrib.auth. What else are we looking for? Import authenticate. Is that the function? Not conf. So here be supposed to be contrib.auth, import authenticate, and then here you can say authenticate. And I guess if we are doing this, then in this API stuff, we can actually use what is that function? We had the function, this one here, Django auth. You can still also use it for authentication, okay, if we want to, but this is of course what we shall be using for our tokens. So we can say authenticate the user, and then we shall say JWT. Do we need this? Think. I guess my mind is getting tired. I should have probably ended here and made a new video for login, but let's continue. So we want to authenticate against the username, okay. Check if the payload, the username is correct, as well as the password, not make password, but password, okay, will be equals to payload dot password, like that. And then so that should return a user, a valid user. If not user, if that fails, we shall return a 401 with a message saying invalid credentials, as simple as that. Then after that, what else do we need? We can now create a token if everything is working. So create token, simply create an empty line there, create underscore token, and then token for the user, and then we shall say return 200, and of course the access token. I can actually just copy what we have down here. I guess the time I spent scrolling, I should have done typing this. All right, so let's test that. Come here and say auth. We want to test for this user. So we shall need, I guess, those two. These, let me just copy the whole thing. We shall edit at /login. What do we need? Let me verify. Our schema, login schema, expects a username and password only. So shall remove the email, shall remove the confirm password, and then send. We get forbidden CSRF check failed. Of course, that's because we are using the Django auth, and Django auth checks for CSRF protection from forms, and that is why I think we don't need this. Okay, my bad. All right, so let's test again. Let's kill the server and run it again, then send a request. We get unauthorized this time, detail unauthorized. Why? Let's go back to API. You see we used API, the API route. This route here has authentication using AuthBearer class. We're supposed to use auth router. So auth router has no authentication tied to it. So I'll paste that and then send a request. We're getting a bad request this time. Okay. Cannot pass request body. So what is wrong? Is it this? Send. All right. There's that comma. So I guess I'm learning things afresh. All right. So when we refresh the response, the details here, we get an access token. Okay. So that looks okay. Access token, token type bearer. So let's look at something else in the next video.